nature and friendship. We know who we are. And I don't think I would be me without you being you. Your direction, expression, intention has taken us far.
Hey everybody, this is our second podcast, our second Be the Wellness podcast. Welcome to the show.
Indeed.
Adam likes to give the one-liners.
It's the
Hello.
very subtle, low entry.
Yes.
Keeping the expectations down.
We are recording this from Costa Rica, actually. We're here at Adam's dad's house. Adam's dad just recently relocated permanently to Costa Rica, and we will be running our first international retreat here tomorrow in Playa Acatal. So we're really excited to get that underway, and wish that you were all here with us, but hopefully we'll do some more adventures in the near future that we can all be together.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to be here. This is it's been something my dad's been working on for a long time, and it's really turned into a cool spot. So I'm stoked for him, and it's awesome to hang out, and we can get this podcast done and get on with our luxury retreat tomorrow, and it'll be pretty exciting.
Yep, definitely. We even got a little bit of surf in, so life's looking up. So, okay, let's get to the question. So, as we mentioned last week, the majority of this podcast will be focused for now on answering questions that we're seeing come through the feed, common topics and scenarios.
Yes.
And just, give a voice to those things that are coming up so that we can help you guys make your way to the healthiest lifestyle possible.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That is the idea. So, number one topic was exercise. Yes, as predicted, right?
Yep, absolutely. As predicted, the exercise has become kind of an interesting, topic in the feed. There's people that seem to be really stoked on what it is, and there's people that seem to be pretty intimidated, and then others who maybe just don't see the point of what we're doing. So hopefully we can shed some light on some of that and lend a little bit of courage to those who are intimidated, and then just, share in the stoke of the people who are enjoying it.
Definitely. So some of you out there are really loving the workouts, which is awesome. And some of you have given us some feedback that it's a little bit more intense than what you're used to, or perhaps there's a little bit more cardio than you expected. But we want to first just explain our philosophy on this program and why it's set up this way and how you can scale it to fit your needs. So we first want you guys to understand that this program is designed to improve your fitness, help you lean out, and give you the best chance at a healthy metabolic profile. So this is like, in a perfect world, this is how we would train to get the most well-rounded fitness and wellness. This doesn't mean that you have to do it all. You can choose to do a strength part and skip the conditioning. You can break the accessory work up and fit it in throughout the day. This is about finding what your 100% effort looks like. And you can even give yourself full points if you don't end up doing the whole thing, but it's your whole effort. The points are not there to hold you hostage. They're here to help you be accountable in a healthy way. So if you need to abbreviate, that's fine.
Yeah, and we just really want people to kind of grasp the idea that this stuff is challenging, but that's a big part of what it is that we're trying to do here, is challenge you. That's why, it's called a challenge. And there's any number of ways to do this, but just like Vanessa said, what we really want is for people to give their best effort for the day. And that's going to be different depending on, if you're feeling well, or if you slept well, or you didn't sleep well, or if you're having an overall stressed out day, whatever it is. Give it 100% of what you have within your abilities and skill, and give yourself the points for it.
Yes.
If you like the idea of not giving yourself the points because it makes you feel more accountable, that's totally up to you. So it's really just one of those things. We want you to be accountable to yourself, and we want you to be as compliant as you can be in the moment.
Right, absolutely. And it's like, if you get through the in-step lunges and you do a little bit of the strength training and you're shot, then that's your maximum effort. And honestly, if you want to give yourself 100% of the points, that's okay. You did your max effort. So we want to give you the whole picture and then allow you, empower you, encourage you to decide, this is my healthiest point of view for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And when there's questions about that, and if, how that could work, then hit us up in the feed. This is, I mean, there's a number of ways to go about this when you start programming for lots of people, but what we've chosen to do is show you exactly what we would like you to do in a perfect world, and then ask the questions so that everybody can get the gist of it through the feed and see how things are going back and forth. So tag away, get us in here. Let's see if we can sort some of these things out for you.
Yeah, and you guys have done an excellent job at, really spurring on the conversation, asking for additional information on things you need. Adam and I did the in-step lunge and reverse lunge series because a lot of people had questions about it. So it's great. We can have this interactive community where if you guys need additional help or resources, we're here to provide those.
Yep, absolutely. So with all that said, one of the things that we've been hearing quite a bit of is the timing of the workouts, and meaning that they're longer than what people necessarily have time for, or longer than they expected them to be. So I wanted to give you a couple of quick tips for how to reduce them or abbreviate the workout, so to speak. So the very first thing is sort of to address is the order in which things go. And we do want, if at all possible, for you to go warm up, mobility 1, mobility 2, strength session. If you can do that in that order, that's great. Now, the accessory work and the conditioning, you can fit in throughout the day. You can mix those things up and do them as a circuit. That tends to save quite a bit of time. And what I mean by that is, let's say that your accessory work for the day is plank and push-up and pull-up. And so you've got 3 rounds of that. And so it just going from plank to push-up to pull-up, 1 round. Plank to push-up to pull-up, another round. And what that does is it allows you to reduce the rest time in between, because you're not using the same muscle group over and over. So that tends to save people quite a bit of time. The other thing that you can do is take that accessory work and blend it in throughout the day. So if you are lucky enough to be in a place that has a pull-up bar, you can just hit some push-ups here and there throughout the day. Just accumulate that stuff and go ahead and swipe it off as you complete it. We're just trying to get a total amount of work done.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that a lot of folks have been asking about the rest interval in between sets. So if you do it as a circuit, then like Adam said, you don't have to worry so much about what that rest interval looks like, because you can just move from one muscle group to the next. However, if you do want to break it up and you're looking for some kind of rest interval period, 30 seconds, 1 minute max would probably be just about right to get you back and ready to do the next set.
Yep, that's correct. And we just don't want it to be too quick. Like, these aren't, the accessory work is not meant to be a metabolic conditioning circuit where you're huffing and puffing and can barely keep it together at the end. It really is, you want to at least catch your breath between rounds.
Right. Cool. So then moving on to some more information on the conditioning aspect of it.
Yep, that's the other thing, because this, if you folks came over from the Primal Blueprint 21-day challenge, and you are used to sort of doing one or the other in a day and not both. And something that we think is seems to work pretty good is adding a short bit of conditioning after your strength training for the day. And it can be optional. You can choose not to do that, but for a lot of people, it's going to be a really nice stimulus. And for one reason, when you're doing the strength training, more often than not, people don't do an appropriate cool down period after any kind of strength training. It's tough to get even just a fresh warm up in, but let alone a cool down afterwards to kind of stimulate circulation and get everything moving after your hard strength session. So that's one way to look at these conditioning pieces at the end of the workout is, some sort of active recovery cool down in your post-workout period. So even if you don't attack the conditioning component after the strength session, try to do something. Get in there and do it, even if it's just a 10% movement or 10% effort, I should say. Get in and move and try to get things circulating and flowing. It's going to help you recover much better for the next day. And so as far as, you'll see in the coming weeks that there's, on some of these conditioning days, there is a rest option or a play option for the conditioning. And with the rest option, one of the things that we really want to look at is your resting heart rate. If you're having a hard time deciding whether or not you should rest or you should do the conditioning, check your resting heart rate a couple of mornings. And the way to do that is right when you first wake up in the morning, if you remember to do it, just check your heart rate before you get out of bed. Do it laying down if at all possible, and just get your resting heart rate for the day. And if your resting heart rate is below 60, then odds are skipping the conditioning is probably not that big of a deal. If your resting heart rate is above 60, then you need a little bit more aerobic capacity. And getting that aerobic capacity is going to help you with all the rest of your workouts. It's going to make everything that you're doing a lot easier.
And can you remind the listeners how long they take their heart rate for? What's the time interval to get their resting heart rate?
Yeah, well, you can take it for 6 seconds and multiply it by 10, or you can take it for 30 seconds and multiply it by 2, or you can take it for 60 seconds and just count. I mean, any number of ways. The longer that you take it, the more accurate it's going to be.
Right. Cool.
Right.
I just had a feeling that folks were going to have questions.
Yeah,
about
totally.
That.
No, good call. So, and then that's another upside to using like the Motion X sleep app or something like that. They give you an opportunity to check your resting heart rate in the morning when you wake up and catalog it. So it's just another good piece of data that you can get from that app. So that's kind of the deal with the rest versus conditioning. When you would want to do one over the other. The next thing that we've gotten a few questions on is the tempo intervals, and honestly, I think it's the name that gets to people, because it's really it's pretty standard. Like for anybody who's done any sort of running, it's like fartlek training or telephone poles, right? Where you know, if you're jogging down the road, you run faster between one telephone pole and you jog to the next one and faster to the next one. That's really all we're looking to do here. So what we want you to do is fluctuate your heart rate back and forth between 50 to 55% of your max up to about 75% of your max. You don't want to go over that, because we're kind of defeating the purpose and getting outside of that sort of aerobic zone that we're trying to keep in. But that fluctuation, that going up and down and ramping your heart rate up, letting it recover, ramping it up, letting it recover, is a time-tested method for increasing your aerobic capacity. And the other thing that's cool about it is that it works really good as active recovery. So you get the blood pressure up, you get the heart rate up, the blood pressure comes up behind it, it drops off a little bit at the bottom, and every time you make those changes, you get better perfusion, more or less. You're going to get a lot more movement through the system. And the active recovery thing just can't really be overlooked. The thing to remember is that our lymphatic system is what drains out all of the waste from the efforts that we put in our workouts. And the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. The only thing that pumps the lymphatic system is your muscles, and that you just have to move in order to do that. So that's kind of the jam on the tempo intervals.
And with that said, Adam and I, we kind of batted back and forth. Should we name them different things so perhaps the names aren't as intimidating or as off-putting? But what we really came to the conclusion is that we want this to be an educational program where we're actually teaching you these terms and you're getting comfortable with the terminology so that you can actually maintain this long term. And, it would be easy for us to call, the tempo intervals walk, run, happy day, or walk, run, silly skip, or something else that's less intimidating. But we want you guys to understand these terms and get familiar with them and what they mean, and really empower yourself to become, better athletes and in better condition, and have the words to put with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, words are very powerful, and I think that it helps a lot to when you start considering yourself an athlete and you start putting yourself in that athlete's mindset, is to start speaking the language of an athlete. It's like we've said in our goal session, the decide who you are thing is, I'm an athlete, and athletes talk like this, or at least their coaches do,
Right.
And so, that's sort of it's where we're trying to get to.
And this may be just an issue of how you identify with yourself. Maybe you don't feel like an athlete, so these things are overwhelming, and these terms seems like something that you'd hear in a CrossFit class, or it's just not something you're really comfortable with. But we are here to help you in that process to get comfortable with it, because you are an athlete. You are capable of this. You have a perfectly healthy, willing, and able body that can do these things and can get used to the verbiage that goes along with them. So, instead of us quote unquote dumbing it down for you, we want to raise you guys up and help you to understand what these things mean and get you to a place where it's really comfortable.
Yep. That's
That's
That
the
is
deal.
definitely the goal.
Yes.
So we're going to keep trudging along with these words.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to.
So tempo intervals are not going anywhere.
It is. There's still going to be intervals. Yeah. And and there's things are going to switch up a little bit. You'll notice as we go through that the primary strength workouts rotate through a lower body day, an upper body day, and a total body day. And the accessory work is always there to offset the primary work. So, for instance, if it's some sort of a press, a standing press as the strength day, then in the accessory work you're going to see some sort of a standing pull, like a pull-up or something. So we're trying to work opposite spectrums of the muscle. So you get a horizontal push-pull and a vertical push-pull, and that kind of stuff is the idea on that.
Right.
If anybody was wondering.
Yes, if anyone was wondering, the method to the madness.
Yeah, exactly. And if anybody's still listening after the temporal interval diatribe. So one more thing on conditioning that I just want to talk about a little bit is the high resistance intervals. And because this is one that even if you've been around and training for a while, you probably haven't really heard of it, at least not talked about in this context. And the reason I think it's really important for this, the context of this challenge and for what most people's goals are on here, which is to become more efficient at burning fat, lose some body fat, increase body composition, all that kind of stuff. These high resistance intervals are a really good tool for doing that. And as we've kind of know to some degree, is that there's, when you're talking about energy systems, the most basic is aerobic and anaerobic. And aerobic means that you're generating ATP, you're generating fuel using some sort of substrate, whether it's fat or carbohydrate and oxygen. And once you're fat adapted, which is this whole goal of what we're trying to do here, and there's not a ton of carbohydrate available, your body will burn body fat via this aerobic process, and it does it pretty efficiently. And so the thing is, the more mitochondria and the more cells that we have that are actively trying to burn fat via this aerobic pathway, the more efficient that it's going to be. And one of the things that is somewhat challenging to do is to get the deep, fast twitch muscle fibers to burn fat aerobically. And the reason for that is because the only time we ever really use them are doing these sort of high glycolytic, sprint type efforts where the body would prefer to burn sugar and burn muscle glycogen and liver glycogen to produce the energy as quickly as it is. So what these high resistance intervals are designed to do is recruit these deep, fast twitch muscles, but in an aerobic way that increases their mitochondrial density and increases their ability to burn fat in an aerobic capacity. So that's what we're trying to do with them. So not that probably affects any of your personal ideas about whether or not you want to do jump squats or not, but that's the goal. It's not like a normal interval where we're trying to wind people and trying to get them,
right.
Sick.
Trying to recruit the most muscle that you can to utilize in that range of motion so that you can really get the most bang for your buck.
Exactly. And then let yourself recover completely so that you stay in an aerobic capacity, not an anaerobic capacity where you're burning sugar.
Right.
So
and now that you all are fat adapted, this is really, really relevant to you.
Yeah. This will work really well. It's a great way to burn body fat, once you're doing this. So the other thing that comes up with the high resistance intervals is that they're a little bit weird because we set kind of a heart rate limit for recovery, and which is 130. So if you guys remember from reading through the thing, it says 5 seconds of some sort of strenuous activity followed by enough rest to get your heart rate below 130. Some people won't get their heart rate up to 130 during these motions. You may not in 5 seconds be able to get it up there. And if you can't, that's fine. Just rest the 60 seconds that's prescribed and go on. Some people who are really going for this and they're, doing some sort of weighted hill sprints or sled drags or, they're at altitude or something like that, then their heart rates are going to tack a little bit more, during this exercise. But if it's not happening for you, don't worry about it. It's still
working.
Yeah, you're still doing what you need to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and that is really when you just have to look at the rest interval as just a timed thing. Like, okay, now I'm just going to give myself 60 seconds and hit it again. But yeah, it is really important for folks who do get up above 130 to make sure that they get down below 130 before they start their next interval.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So hopefully that has helped kind of distill some of the information in the workouts, and we're going to keep trucking along here. We're going to keep educating and informing you guys on what all of these workouts are intended to do. And I think over the upcoming months, people will just get more and more comfortable with the verbiage, and these terms that we're maybe a little intimidated by right now are going to be second nature.
Yeah.
So more specifics on training. We've had a couple questions on the WAS trainer. Those of you out there that have purchased them and are wondering what the heck you're supposed to do with them. So a couple of things that they're intended for. One is if you don't have pull-ups, so you're still working your pull-ups, these are great to use for that progression. And if you watch the first video in the pull-up progression, it's the body row. And this is exactly what the WAS trainer is used for, to do those body row progressions. So anyone who doesn't have strict pull-ups, of course you can do the negatives, you can work them that way. But if you have the WAS trainer, this is exactly what we are intending you to use it for, is for the pull-up progressions, doing the body rows. The second thing you can use it for is for your push-ups. So elevated push-ups, if you don't have full depth push-ups, you can do elevated push-ups on a wall, on a table. You can use the WAS trainer for this as well. However, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than doing it on a stable surface, because obviously you're going to have that stabilizing element, and you're going to have to be, really maintaining force and structure through the shoulder girdle in order to maintain that shape. So that's another option, but primarily the body row is where it's at.
Yeah, and then another thing I'll mention with the with regard to the pull-up progressions is because there's going to be a point where you can do 1 or 2 pull-ups or 1 or 2 negative pull-ups, but you can't necessarily do the prescribed amount. And so there's no problem in switching back and forth between. So let's say you're using your WAS trainer to do body rows, and you start at a very upright angle. So let's say you're almost standing and you're just pulling up close. And then over time you start to move your feet out a little bit. So your body's becoming more of a 45-degree angle, which is putting more stress on. And, and so you slowly work your way down into a more horizontal position with that. At some point in there, you're going to be able to do chin hold negatives. And so the recommendation would be to do as many chin hold negatives as you can, and then finish off with the WAS trainer.
Right. And
the same thing would go once you get normal pull-ups. Do 1 or 2 pull-ups or whatever it is you can do, and then switch to the negatives, and then switch to the ROS or the WAS if you have to go all the way back.
Right.
So that's how you progress.
Yep.
Yep.
And another thing you can mess around with is just the straight planking as well. If you want to try planking in them, maybe don't go for the push-ups, but you can actually plank in them, and that gives you just that little extra strain on keeping everything stable. So that's another option to use it for. Obviously, there's tons of things you can use it outside of what we are prescribing, but this is the fundamental use for us and for our terms for now.
Yep. So if you guys that are tinkering with them, if you come up with cool stuff that you like to do, please share it with folks, because this is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
And when you go, traveling, in fact, I think there was somebody that was mentioning the one-legged deadlifts, right?
Yes.
They were doing the single leg deadlift using the TRX, I think, as their support, and that's awesome.
Yeah. So anyone who was also, if you had any issues with the deadlift and you're looking to use your WAS trainer for that, there is a video that I can share with you. So hit me up and I can get that to you folks. Okay.
Sweet.
So let's see. Next up is some talk on nutrient timing.
Yeah. So we've had a few conversations going on, actually excellent conversations back and forths in the feed, which I love to do regarding nutrient timing. And the word that gets thrown around a lot now is backloading. It's become kind of popular. It used to be just post-workout nutrition, and then it was cyclic, some sort of cyclic low carb, and then there was the anabolic diet and all of these various things, but they're all talking about putting the majority of your carbohydrate in your dinner meal. And so that's just kind of generally what people are saying. When you're saying, well, do you backload? You're like, yeah, I eat all my carbs at night. How does that sound? And yes. But so specifically, though, the way that the backloading situation works, the idea behind it is that your body is naturally insulin sensitive in the morning when you wake up in a normal, healthy metabolism. There's a lot of room for error there, but in a normal, healthy metabolism, you're insulin sensitive when you wake up in the morning. And throughout the day, you become more insulin resistant. And so that's not just muscle cells that are insulin resistant, it's also fat cells. So in the morning, you are more sensitive to storing fat. In the afternoon, you're less sensitive to storing fat. Less apt to store fat might be a better way to say that.
And it rhymes.
You're still sensitive to it, yeah.
Less apt to store fat.
Apt to fat. So what the idea behind backloading, the idea is that you don't eat any carbohydrate in the morning when you are insulin sensitive. So you're not going to do anything that's going to stimulate a massive push of insulin that is going to store excess nutrients as body fat, and now or glycogen, either one. But in the afternoon, when you're insulin resistant, you can take advantage of what's lovingly termed non-insulin mediated glucose transport, which means that after you work out, your muscle cells, generally speaking, become more sensitive to the glucose in your bloodstream and can actually absorb it without insulin. And so the goal is to eat all of your carbohydrate in that window when your muscles are the only thing that are apt to absorb the glucose. Remember, the fat cells are being resistant. The muscle cells are good to go post-workout. So that's the entire goal, is to just sort of hack the system, and the amount of carbohydrate that you do eat for the day, even if it's only 50 to 100 grams, you're putting in that post-workout window when, all of it's going to go to the most good. That's the theory.
Right. However, with that said, there is another sort of piece of the puzzle here, and that is how long you should wait until you actually eat that carbohydrate. So we get a lot of questions about if I should carb backload or refeed or whatever you want to call it right after my workout, or should I wait? And we generally recommend waiting 30 to 60 minutes. And the reason we recommend this is because you do get a little extra human growth hormone after your workout. So you want to take advantage of that uptick of human growth hormone, which really helps you to build that lean muscle mass. So take advantage of that in that 30 to 60 minutes and stay fasted after your workout, and then refeed.
Yeah, and right, because the insulin will shut off the growth hormone response.
Exactly.
So when you do start to refeed and you get the insulin bump that comes along with it, it more or less downregulates the growth hormone response. The other thing that's still a little bit new, but some of the stuff's kind of interesting on it, and it's fun to talk about, but it fits well in this whole hormetic stressor thing, is that the fundamentally exercise and all of this stuff, the way it works is you stress your body out and it adapts to the stressor, right? So we're going through this whole stress response thing after your workout, and the carbohydrate refeed will help stymie that stress response. So it's going to shut off the cortisol, and it's going to kind of quiet down that stress response that your body was feeling from the training. So there's this potentially magic window in there where you're letting the stress response actually do its thing. Your body is being stressed, and you leave it in that window for long enough to maximize your adaptation, but not so long that you start going catabolic. So it's, you can get as geeked out on this stuff as you possibly want to, and some people think it's super cool, and some people probably have turned this off. But I think that if you want to get into it, sort of the three levels of nutrient timing are: I'm not going to do it at all. I don't care. I'm just going to generally eat. And then there's I'm going to put the vast majority of my carbohydrate in my dinner meal, which probably will get you 90% of the benefit that we're looking at here. And then there's this more precision component of it that is, okay, I'm going to, be less than 30 grams of carbohydrate all day long, and I'm going to eat predominantly fat until lunch, and then I'm going to eat a little bit of protein, and then I'm going to train at 4 p.m., and then at 5 p.m. exactly, I'm going to get 70 grams of, high glycemic carbohydrate from, unicorn antler, and then I'm going to eat a big whack of protein, and then I'm going to wait and make sure that I consume every calorie that I'm going to eat for the day within the next 2 hours. So there's all of those kind of things there, and it's interesting. In the feed, we've kind of talked about all of them. Some people are super into it, and they're having some good success and luck with it. I personally, this is what I do, and it works really well for me.
Right. And I think most people really respond well to it. The only thing is, for females, there's always a little bit of a tricky thing when you've got elevated stress levels and you're female. Our hormones and the way that our body is designed sometimes can be a little antithetical to doing, really staving off all of our carbohydrates till the evening meal. Sometimes we need to spread it out a little bit more, especially if we're under high volumes of stress. So this kind of goes into the same basket of intermittent fasting. If you are under a lot of stress, intermittent fasting can start to be a little contraindicated as well, because now you can start to elicit a little bit of a cortisol response, and you can actually, get into the opposite effect of what we're trying to accomplish with the intermittent fasting. So for women out there, staving off all of your carbohydrates till the evening meal is okay, unless things aren't working well. So if you're stalling out on weight loss, if you're overstressed, you may think about spreading it out a little bit more between your lunch and your evening meal. And this is really the difference between men and women. So we have to be a little bit more calculated, and we have to do a little bit more self-testing to see what works for us. And, for me, I can do pretty much the majority of my carbohydrates in the dinner meal as well. But on super stressful days or during certain times in my cycle, I have to actually have a little bit more carbohydrate throughout the day. So, mess with it. Don't think that these are hard and fast rules.
Yeah, and the sleep component of this just can't really be undervalued either. I mean, I think Vanessa had a client actually at one point who was a night shift nurse, and then was off and was working and had problems controlling her blood sugar while she was at work. Got her going, paleo diet all squared away, sort of an intermittent fasting / carbohydrate in the end of the meal thing, blood sugar completely under control, totally dialed in under that method, then went back to work and could not regulate her blood sugar eating that sort of nutrient partitioning anymore. Just couldn't work.
Yeah.
And so that sleep stress component of it is just massive.
It's huge, yeah. And, and Adam and I, obviously we harp on sleep all the time, but stress is right there. We have to make sure that those two things are under control, and, everything falls in line behind it, really.
Yep.
Cool. So that's a little bit about nutrient timing. Okay, we've got some questions about stevia. And, overall, we're not going to come out against stevia and say there's, a big issue with it. Science says it's okay. It's okay.
Fine.
It's not a big deal.
It's a fine
However, we are going to stake our claim in honey and just say, from our point of view, there's a lot of wonderful benefits that come along with honey. So you've got, some trace minerals, some flavonoids, some polyphenols. You've got lots of good things that are actually antibacterial, antibiotic properties. There's a lot of things about honey that we see a lot of nutrient value in. So, either one is going to be okay, but if you're kind of wavering on which one to do, and you're not opposed to the quote unquote sugar side of the honey, there's a lot of great benefits that come along with it.
Yeah, that actually, in some of the studies, the more recent studies that have been done on the sugar stuff, like the things that we worry about, on honey, the things that we worry about with the sugars, like problems with LDL cholesterol and triglycerides and inflammation and all that stuff, what they're finding with these honey studies is that they're actually seeing significant reductions, in the risk profile in both LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, C-reactive protein, which is a measure of total inflammation. They're seeing people with higher HDL cholesterol. It does a bunch of good things, and it's just sort of study after study that's coming out saying, these increases in serum antioxidant levels and all this stuff. It's it's not that it's just the lesser of two evils. It's actually probably healthful. Beneficial.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so that's our pitch, yeah. And that doesn't mean that, everyone should go out and buy a jar of honey and, eat it throughout the day. But if you are going to do these things, and these are long-term goals and sustainable ways of living, why not include honey, since it has so many wonderful attributes? Yeah,
and again, the honey thing, raw, local honey.
Yes.
And organic, it's funny, there's a honey person at our farmer's market who hers is not organic, but she'll swear up and down that there's no such thing as organic honey because you can't control the bees.
Right. Yeah, which is a good point.
Like, I don't know if my bees went over there and ate off of a plant that or pollinated a plant that had been sprayed with pesticides. Therefore, I can't call it honey or organic. So
right, and
whatever, raw.
If you're looking for especially the allergen effects of it, so if you've got seasonal allergies especially, it's great to get some local honey, local honey that will help regulate you to the pollens that are in the air in your area.
Yep.
Okay, so we are almost through this. We've got chocolate and wine. Oh, Primal Blueprint just sets us up for this one. Oh, Mark Sisson, you and your chocolate and wine. Okay. No, we jest. But here's the deal. Bottom line, chocolate and wine are not health foods.
Yep.
We don't put them in the category of being beneficial. The only thing we can say is that obviously if they help you to de-stress or something along those lines, maybe that's a great benefit. But we aren't pro chocolate and wine. We don't think that you should be doing this every day, every night. This isn't something that we think is adding nourishment to your daily routine.
Yep, exactly.
However, we want you guys to decide. This is where we want to empower you for you to decide, hey, is this in alignment with my goals, with where I'm at and with where I want to go? If it is, if you're at your ideal body composition, if things are trucking along pretty well, if your sleep's not hindered, which is a really big one, if you're not having sleep issues, then maybe, a glass of wine here and there and some chocolate is not that big of a deal. We're not going to come out and say that it's a problem for everybody, because it's not. It's very individual. And it's up to you to decide if eating chocolate and having a glass of wine is a problem for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, it really just comes down to sort of setting some of these goals and ideas for yourself. And I think, if you're struggling, if you have this idea that I'm going to go primal or paleo and I'm going to exercise this way and I'm going to lose all of this body fat, and you're doing all of those things, you're exercising, you're sleeping, you're doing all of this stuff, and you're still not seeing the goals that you want and the results that you want, and you're putting away a glass or two of wine a night, and you're hammering down some chocolate here and there, those are probably the next two places to look. And it's a great experiment. It's an easy thing to fix. You can say, all right, well, I'm just going to go 2-3 weeks without any wine and chocolate and see what takes place. It's easy for us to say, like, that sounds like giving up your firstborn to some people, which is understandable. But the thing that we can't just go along sort of saying that, oh, that's just really weird. You should totally be able to eat wine and chocolate and still lose weight. Don't know what to tell you. This thing must not work, because the reality is that ethanol is a poison. That's what's up. Your body has to deal with it. And I think that, even more so than the carbohydrate in the wine, the sleep detriment that comes from the alcohol is probably the most important thing. And I talked to somebody about it in the feed, some conversation about this, but there is some truth to, like, if you are going to drink, you should be a day drinker. Stop. Give your body as much opportunity to metabolize that alcohol before bed,
Right.
And that's...
And one other thing I'll mention is, when Adam and I first went paleo, I remember thinking, I had heard somewhere that the chocolate and wine thing, as long as the chocolate was, 80% or more cacao, it was probably not a big deal. And I remember clinging to that as sort of my last thread into, normalcy, that I could say, oh, I can still have my chocolate or I can still have my wine. But I'll tell you, as time goes by, you just stop wanting them, in comparison to the way the rest of the things that we do are making us feel. It stands in stark contrast, and at some point you start to really recognize that. And it may not be right now, it may not be in a month, but a year from now or 2 years from now, you may find that, this chocolate and wine thing that I thought was my last crutch or whatever, it just doesn't seem that important anymore.
Yeah.
So,
even though they have bacon chocolate now, which is crazy.
They have everything chocolate. And they have everything bacon.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's our pitch on chocolate and wine. Once again, we are not saying to you that if you have them, you're out of the rules and you're cheating or whatever. This is a year-long program. So this is reality. This is about sustainability and what you can manage long-term. But that's just sort of where we put it in the, this isn't the most optimum nourishment. So
yep.
That's it.
All right. So the last thing that I think we want to talk just briefly about is just how awesome everybody is
Yes.
in this feed and in the challenge. You guys have been doing such an amazing job of reaching out and talking to each other and answering each other's questions and providing support. I mean, it really is inspirational for us to pick up the feed and take a look at what's going on. So
Right.
just keep up the good work. Good job on sort of stepping outside of your comfort zone and not being afraid to ask the questions and help other people answering their questions.
Yeah, especially that. You guys have been really great about giving each other support and making sure if someone has a rough day or if they have, an issue, you're there for them. And we really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yep. So
Okay, that's it.
one more down. We will be back with you in like a week.
Yeah, we will.
More or less.
Yeah, one a week. So we will be in touch, and you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll speak with you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure.